Okay, students. Today we are going to discuss tutorial questions on investment decision rule. First question is about the NPV. Um, Martin Plunkett owns her business and is considering an investment. If she undertakes the investment, it will pay 40,000 at the end of each of the next 3 years. So you see that this is each of the next 3 years means they are equal. The opportunity requires an initial investment of 10,000 in the start, plus an additional investment at the end of the second year of 50,000. So it means in the end of the second year, they had 40,000 inflow. But then they will also make an outflow of 50,000. So that is why the difference you can see is negative 10,000. So what is the NPV of this opportunity if the cost of capital is 9% per year? Should Marian take it? Okay, so this is a very simple case of NPV. So what do we need to do? We need to discount the cash flows and subtract the outflow. Okay, so present value for this one we will write it like this. This is initial cash outflow plus present value of first cash flow. So 40,000 divided by 1.09 power 1. So present value of the second one and the present value of the third one. So NPV, as you can see, is positive. Okay. So before we discuss our next question, so you should know that most of the students I know that they feel confused about the IRR. Okay, if you feel confused, you can tell me through the chat box or through your mic on. How many of you are confused about the IRR? Anyone? So I will assume that you understand fully about the IRR. If you're confused, you can just tell me. I can explain. Okay. So in that case, I assume that there is no issue, but I will somehow explain, because when we draw a timeline between NPV and IRR, NPV and cost of capital, you see this relationship? The relationship is inverse, right? So if you see, this is NPV is equal to initial cash outflow plus C divided by 1 plus R power 1 and so on, right? As you can see, this cost of capital and NPV have inverse relationship, right? So if you draw it on these axes, in the x-axis we have cost of capital, and in y-axis we have NPV. So it means that when cost of capital increases, as you can see, if it increases, NPV should decrease. So we will see a decreasing graph. Okay. So as you can see, this is also cost of capital, cost of capital. This will be cost of capital, cost of capital, cost of capital. If you see at this cost of capital, in other words, at this R, your NPV is equal to 0, right? So at this R, your NPV is equal to 0. In other words, at this cost of capital, your NPV is equal to 0. So we call this particular cost of capital as an IRR. Okay, so it means that IRR is cost of capital at which your NPV is equal to 0, right? So IRR is actually the cost of capital. So it means then what is the purpose of getting an IRR? Because IRR gives us an indication that at this rate, let's say 20%, at this rate, you will make no profit, no loss. So it means that you should try to get your financing less than 20%. So if let's say this is IRR is equal to 20%, and if IRR is equal to 25%, will you take the project, students? Will you take that? If cost of capital is 25%, mean actual cost of capital is 25%, but your IRR is 20%. So will you take the project?
No.
Yeah, because if you see, if you just look at this 25%, you are making a loss, right? So this is your actual R mean that you can get, but this is a theoretical. So it IRR actually sets a boundary so that we know that we cannot go after this IRR. Okay, so thank you. Next question is, your factory has offered a contract to produce a part for a new printer. The contract would be for 3 years, and your cash flows from the contract would be 5 million per year. So 5 million per year for how many years? 3 years. 1, 2, and 3. 5 million. Equal cash flows, right? Your upfront cost to be ready to produce the part would be 8 million. So it means that the cost would be 8 million. Your cost of capital for this contract is 8%. So R is equal to 8%. So what does the NPV rule say you should do? So we should calculate the NPV because this is ICO, and instead of doing the single discounting for each of the cash flow, we can apply the present value of annuity formula, this part. So this is present value of cash inflow, and this is initial cash outflow. So the difference is 4.89. So it means that we should accept the project because our NPV is positive. Next is, if you take the contract, what will be the change in the value of your firm? Of course, so value of the firm would be, it means that the company's value will increase by 4.89. Why? Because we know that NPV is also called shareholder wealth maximization approach as well. Okay, so our company's wealth, because this project is going to increase the value or is going to earn 4.89. So whatever is the earning will be the earning of the company, and the earning of the company actually increases the value of the firm. Okay, so if you see, the value of the firm will increase by 4.89 million, but the same amount of NPV. Okay, so now next question is, you are considering opening a new plant. The plant will cost 95.8 million upfront and will take 1 year to build. After that, it is expected to produce profit of 31.5 million at the end of, just wait a minute. Yeah. So after that, it is expected to produce profit of 31.5 million at the end of every year of production. So this is situation is like this. 0. So the plant will cost 95.8. So it is 95.8. So the cash flows are expected to last forever. Sorry. Yeah, and will take 1 year to build. So it means in the first year there will be no cash flow because the project is taking time to I mean, it will take 1 year to build this project, and after 1 year it means the cash flows will start from year 2. Okay, so the first cash flow will be in year 2. So after that, the cash flows are expected to last forever. So after that, they are going to be for forever. So it means this is a perpetuity question. The cash flows are perpetuity, And if you see, the cash flows are starting after some time, means there is no cash flow. So this is perpetuity, but this is deferred perpetuity. Okay, because there is no cash flow here. So last time, and then calculate the NPV of this investment opportunity if your cost of capital is 7.4%. So R is equal to 7.4%. Should you make the investment? Calculate the IRR and use it to determine the maximum deviation allowable in the cost of capital to leave the decision unchanged. So this part we will explain, but first we need to calculate NPV. Okay, as you can see, there is no cash flow in year zero, so it means that the formula will be present deferred perpetuity formula. Okay, so what we need to do, because the cash flows are starting from year 2, our answer will be at year 1, not at year 0. Okay, so it means the present value of perpetuity of this cash flow at year 1 is equal to this cash flow divided by R. Okay, so it is how much are the cash flows? 31.5 and 7.4. But this answer, please remember, this answer is at year 1. Okay, but we need to bring our answer back to year 0. So that is why, if you see, it is initial cash outflow, and we have to take it back to year 0. So it means we need to do another step. We will divide it by PV1 1 plus R power 1. Okay, so that is why in the formula you can see initial cash outflow plus, since this answer PV1 is at year 1, so we have to take it back to year 0. Okay, so to do that, we will do PV1 divided by 1 plus R power 1, and you will get your answer. So it will be present value of cash inflow at year 0, and this is outflow. So now you have both outflow and inflow. As you can see, this is inflow, this one. And if you see this part, so this is 31.5 divided by 7.4%. This answer is at year 1, so it is PV1. So we are going to divide it by with 1 plus R. So this is 1 plus R power 1. So the answer is 300.54 million. So since it is a positive answer, so we are going to accept this project. Okay, next part is we need to calculate the IRR. To understand the IRR, I mean, normally it happens that with the financial calculator you can easily calculate the IRR, but in the financial calculator you are more used to using N and everything. So that is why it is easy for you to calculate IRR. But here, since it's a case of perpetuity, and that too is a deferred perpetuity, so we need to do a manual calculation. Okay, so we need to do that. So the formula will remain the same as it, because the question is asking us, because we know that at IRR our NPV is equal to 0. So at IRR NPV is equal to 0. Okay, so it means that what is the rate, this rate, we are calling it now IRR. What should be this rate at which the present value that we are going to calculate is equal to present value of cash inflow is equal to present value of cash outflow, mean this outflow. So if they are equal, so then our answer for the NPV would be equal to 0. Okay, how to do that? Because it is like this. NPV is equal to ICO plus present value of cash inflow. Okay, since at IRR NPV is equal to 0 and ICO is largely negative, so ICO is equal to present value of cash inflow. So you will see it is ICO is 95.8 and present value of cash and flow we need to calculate. Okay, so it is equal to 31.5 divided by R, because it's a IRR, sorry, not R, IRR. We need to calculate this rate. But when we will use this formula, you remember that this formula, this answer, you get it at year 1. But to calculate the IRR, also we need to take it to year 0. So this whole formula divided by 1 plus IRR, we also need to power 1. Similarly, it is the same thing that we had done. Just give me a second. Yeah. Are you getting it, students? Let me know if you are understanding this part. Since we need to calculate IRR and the formula that we are applying is at year 1, so we have to take it back to year 0. So what do we need to do? We are going to take it 1 year back. So that is why this answer, this part is equal to this part, but we have to take it back to year 0. So that is why 1 plus IRR power 1. Okay, so if you see this formula, if you adjust this formula, so it will be equal to 95.8 is equal to 31.5 divided by IRR 1 plus divided by 1 plus IRR. Okay, so we need to calculate IRR, so it will be 95.8 plus 95.8 IRR is equal to 31.5 divided by IRR. Okay, so again we need to use another adjustment. If you take this R there, it will be 95.8 plus 95.8 IRR square is equal to 31.5. So if you bring this 31.5 to left side, it will be 95.8 plus 95.8 IRR square minus 31.5 is equal to 0. So can you see this is a quadratic equation, students? Sorry, this is R as well. R mean IRR. Okay. So since it's a quadratic equation and one of the student actually had solved it through the quadratic equation. So as you can see, the student has solved it like this: 95.8 IRR square plus 95.8 IRR minus 31.5 is equal to 0. So since it's a quadratic equation, so if you put all of this information, you will get the answer that is 26.079. So our IRR is equal to 26.079, and as you can see, this is the answer. Okay, so this is called IRR. So if I draw it like this, so IRR is equal to, I'm just writing it from 0 to, so 26.08. So how much is your actual cost of capital, students? In this question, the actual cost of capital is 7.4%. So it means that this is your IRR, but your actual cost of capital is 7.4%. So what is the deviation? Deviation is the difference between your actual cost and IRR. So how much is the deviation? This is equal to 18.68%. Okay, so this is the deviation, 18.68%, without affecting the decision mean. Even if the cost of capital increases again by 18.68% with the current rate, your decision is unaffected, mean you will be still indifferent. You will not reject your investment proposal. Okay, did you get this answer, students? Any issues so far? Anyone? Okay, I assume that there are no issues. Just say yes or no. Okay, thank you, Tika. Okay. Now let's get to next question. Next question is, okay. So this question, because we have two types of cash flows, as you remember from our lecture, that was traditional cash flows mean conventional cash flows where your initial cash flow is negative and rest we are not bothered. But then there are cash flows which are non-conventional where your inflow, their first cash flow is positive. Okay, so this question number 4 is actually is talking about this non-conventional form of cash flows. So when the cash flows are conventional, then IRR and NPV, they say the same rule. I mean, they say the same decision. For instance, if NPV says accept the project, IRR would also means that you should accept the project. Okay. If NPV says rejected, IRR would also say rejected, means our answer would be like that, that we will do that. But if the cash flows are non-conventional, then IRR and NPV, there will be a conflict. Okay. There will be a conflict between NPV and IRR. So if NPV says accepted, then there you will see that IRR would say rejected. If it says rejected, it will say accepted. Okay. So this question is actually a non-conventional form of cash flows question. So we will see how it goes. Okay. So Professor Wendy Smith has been offered the following deal. A law firm would like to retain her for an upfront payment of 52,000. So she will receive 52,000 in the start. Okay. So for her it's an income, but for the law firm it will be an outflow. In return for the next year, mean for next 12 months, uh, the firm would have access to 8 hours of her time every month. So every month she is going to spend 8 hours. Okay. And each hour the rate is 556. So it is 556. So it means every month she will be giving services equivalent to 4448. Okay, she will spend 8 hours and the services of those 8 hours are equal to 4448. Okay, and it will be for how many months? 12 months. Okay, so she received 52,000 and in return she is going to deliver the services equal to worth 4448 for 12 months. Okay, her opportunity cost of capital is 14% per year, so return is 14% per year. Opportunity cost means if she works somewhere else she will earn 14%, but since it's a yearly rate, so we will convert it divided by 12, so we will get we will get how much? 1.17%. Okay, so this is monthly rate. Okay, the question says, what does the IRR rule advise regarding this opportunity, and what about the NPV rule? Okay, so using the financial calculator, at the IRR your NPV should be equal to 0, and this is your cash inflow. Previously it used to be negative, but in this situation it is positive, and this part in normal cases used to be positive, but now we have negative, 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 And as you can see, since they are equal, so we are applying the formula of present value of annuity. So, but using the financial calculator, you can easily calculate it. Otherwise, I had taught you how to do the interpolation. So interpolation formula, interpolation exercise, I have already done it in my lecture with an example. So you can learn how to do the interpolation using the part of my lecture. Okay. So, but if you use the financial calculator, the answer would be 0.404%. So per month. Okay, so it means the IRR is equal to 0.404% per month, but we need to convert it into yearly rate. Okay, so how then the next thing that will come to your mind would be, sir, we can multiply it with 12 and then we get the yearly answer. So 0.0404 multiplied by 12. So you can do that, but but this is not a good way of doing that, because the answer that you get is lower than the answer if you calculate otherwise. So let's take an example. For instance, if I multiply this 4.04% into multiplied by 12, uh, just wait a minute, 404 divided by 100 multiplied by 12. Yeah, so this would be the answer would be 4.84%. Okay, so this is annual rate. But if you see, if we use the effective annual rate, so effective annual rate is equal to 1 plus EPR, mean periodic rate, power m minus 1. EPR is, this is what you have calculated, right? So it should be equal to 1.00404 power m is 12 minus 1. So this is effective annual rate. Effective annual rate is equal to 4.96%. Okay, as you can see, the answer for simple multiplication is 4.84%, but with the effective annual rate is 4.96%. The difference is not that much. I mean, the difference is not great, but as you can see, uh, but the answer in effective annual rate is higher. Okay, and if you see the reason, it would be normally it is just because that effective annual rate considers the compounding. As you can see, considers the compounding while it ignores the compounding. And when we include the compounding, so it means it is the reinvestment. So reinvestment gets us a higher answer. So that is why it is 4.96%. Okay, so according to NPV, IRR is equal to 4.96%, while your R is equal to 14%. Since your IRR is lower than your cost of capital, so rule says that you will reject it. Okay, because IRR should be higher than your cost of capital. Okay, let's see what NPV rule says. If you calculate the NPV, so monthly cost of capital is 1.16. Sorry, I wrote 1.77%. So if you do, so it is 1.16%. Compute the NPV using this discount rate. By the way, I have calculated this by 12. Okay. Okay, NPV is equal to 52,000 minus this information, and your answer is positive. As you can see, IRR says that we are going to reject it, but NPV says we are going to accept it because it is positive. Now you can see that since there are unconventional cash flows, so you will see that there is a conflict. Okay, so in the situations when there is a conflict between NPV and IRR, NPV versus IRR, so which option would you choose? You normally base your decision based on NPV. Okay, so it means that we will take this project, though IRR says that do not take it, but we will take it because NPV is positive. Next. So you have to buy a new, this question is basically the decision between purchase decision versus uh, lease. Okay, sometime you also have to make a decision, investment decision, to either purchase an equipment or lease it. So this question is dealing this concept. And for the concept, uh, you will apply the same formula. You remember that in the loan amortization, you remember that you knew how to calculate C, or payment, right? How did you do that? It was equal to PV, payment. You apply the same formula of uh, annuity for the loan amortization. Okay, so how did you calculate this PMT? So it was, you had adjusted this formula to calculate the PMT. So same concept will be applied here as well. So it means that we can calculate PMT if we know the PV, right? If you are going to calculate PMT, we should know PV. So PV is basically called the price. Okay, so it means once we know this price, we can easily get PMT. Okay, so for this question, you will see that first it is giving you the information of PV. So you have to buy a new copier. The cost of copier is 2000 plus 400 per year in maintenance cost. So it means that you will incur 2000 upfront plus 400 per year in the maintenance cost. For okay, the copier will last for 5 years. Since it's 5 years and it is every year, so you don't need to make any adjustment. So it is 5 years. So 400 divided by 0.06 is the discount rate here. Okay, if your discount rate is 6%, what is the most you would be willing to pay per year to lease the copier? Your first lease payment is due in 1 year. So it means that the decision is that either you go for buying the copier or take it on lease. Okay, and the first lease payment is due in year 1. So it means it is not due in year 2 or year 3. So it is a simple case. Okay, not a deferred case. Okay, so first we need to calculate the cost of the copier, so that once we know it, then we can calculate it with respect to lease. Okay, so present value of cost is equal to initial cost plus present value of the maintenance costs. So it is equal to 3684.95. So this is equal to present value, similar to the present value I just mentioned. Okay, now we have got the present value, and now we need to calculate the PMT. So here they have written effective annual cost. It could be effective annual rate. So I'm just replacing it with the PMT just to make it easier, because we have already learned this concept. Okay, so we need to calculate the PMT. So how do we need do that? So you have the present value is equal to PMT divided by 0.06, 1 minus 0.06 power 5. Same formula, this formula. So if you get the answer would be 874.79. So in other words, so this is the most you would pay, okay, in terms of lease payment, if the purchase price of the copier is 3684.95. So it is equivalent to a situation if you buy it, right? So that is why it was written like equivalent annual cost. So equivalent to buying it. So then it means that once you buy a copier, why do you take it on lease? So if you buy versus lease, if you buy it, you have to put a whole lot of money to buy something. But if it is on lease, in the lease, you don't pay it at once, you pay it in years. Let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You distribute your payment in different years. So this is the maximum price, or this is the maximum payment that you would be willing to pay if you take this agreement of lease. Okay, because buying and maintaining it is equivalent to 8749, because If you see, buying and maintaining is equivalent to this one. So this payment for 5 years is equivalent to this cost. Okay, that is the most you would pay to lease. So this is the maximum price you would be willing to pay. Okay. Next question is question number 6, and that is the last one. You are considering the following projects and can take only one. So it means these projects are mutually exclusive. Okay. So I have explained in detail what is the difference between mutually exclusive versus independent already. Mutually exclusive are one. If we accept A, then we have to reject B. So we have to drop one project if we are accepting one, and independent, if the signs are okay, it means NPVs are okay, we can accept both, right? So but this question is saying that you have equal, these are mutually exclusive project, your cost of capital is 11%. Okay, R is equal to 11% and mutually exclusive. So the payments, if you see, the payments are equal, the outflows are equal for A and B, and these are the, this is the timeline. Okay, and for both is equal, cost is also equal for both of them. Okay, so when the projects have equal life, number one, and when the project has equal outflow, okay, equal outflow and equal life, then we say that these projects have equal scale. Okay, equal scale mean they have equal cost, mean minus 100 minus 100, as well as they have equal lives. Okay, so 4 years, 4 years, so we call it as the projects have equal scales. Okay, so once you have the equal scales, then then there is a situation that you need to calculate, that is called crossover rate. Okay, you will calculate crossover rate. So we are going to do this in this question. Okay, okay, what is the NPV of each project at your cost of capital? What is IRR? So it's again a simple case, and the question C says, at what cost of capital are you indifferent between the two projects? Okay, normally we are indifferent at a rate that we call it as IRR. So IRR is rate at which we are indifferent to select a project or not, but this question is saying you are indifferent between the two projects. So it means that we are calling it is now a rate, but this is called crossover rate. So crossover rate. So at this rate, we are also indifferent whether we are going to select project A or B. So it means that at this rate, NPV of A should be equal to NPV of B. In other words, the difference between the two NPVs should be 0. In other words, NPV of A minus NPV of B should be equal to 0. So at this rate, difference of NPV is equal to 0. But if you see at IRR, the not difference, NPV is equal to 0. Okay, so if I ask you what is the difference between IRR and crossover rate, IRR normally talks about only one project, but crossover rate talks about two projects. At IRR, number one, at IRR, we are talking about just the NPV, but in crossover, we are calling it as the difference between NPVs of the two projects. Okay, so this is, you should remember. So now let's calculate that. First of all, we need to calculate NPV of project A. So this is cost of capital, and since cash flows are not equal, so we cannot apply the present value of annuity formula. So we are simply discounting it, and our answer is 9.06 for the first one, and cost of capital is, remember, 11%. And similarly, it goes for project B, and our answer is 12.62%. I think we already know how to do the NPV and IRR, so I'm just uh, using this information to explain answer C. Okay, so solving for the investment discount rate for IRR, if you solve the IRR for A using the financial calculator and for B also using the financial calculator, you will get 14.7% and 17.8%. So students, I'm assuming that you know how to do the IRR through financial calculator. If you don't have financial calculator, of course, you have to calculate IRR through interpolation. And interpolation, if I explain interpolation, it will again take me 15 to 20 minutes for every question. So that is why you need to watch the recording that I have done on how to do the IRR through interpolation if you don't have financial calculator. So I have explained that in detail. Okay. So IRR for A is 14.7%, for B is 17.8. Okay. So as you can see, our cost of capital is 11%. Okay. So first, based on NPV, it is positive, accepted, positive, accepted. So which one do we need to accept, because the projects are mutually exclusive? So we will say that since B has the higher NPV, NPV of B is higher than NPV of A. So we are going to accept B. Okay. So it should be the case as well for IRR, because these cash flows are conventional cash flows. So let's see. So IRR of B, is that greater than A? Yes, it is greater than A, is greater than IRR of A. So again, we are going to accept project B. So based on both NPV and IRR, so we have decided that we are going to accept project B. Next question is, so the question is asking us what is the rate at which the difference between the NPVs is equal to 0. So we need to calculate that rate. But remember the calculation of the crossover rate, because IRR is a rate at which NPV of one project is 0. Crossover rate is the rate at which the difference is 0. But the calculation for the crossover rate will still be the same in the financial calculator that you do for IRR. Okay, same formula would be applied for the same method in the financial calculator, or interpolation would be used for crossover rate as well. Okay, so to calculate the crossover rate, how to do that? So you again take these two projects A and B. Project A has an outflow. So first of all, the first thing that you need to do is to take difference, because we know that at the crossover rate, the difference should be equal to 0. So first of all, you will take the difference of outflows and the difference of inflows, difference of inflows, difference of inflows, inflows. Okay, so you can take the difference either in either direction, 50 from 25 or 25 from 50. No issues, it will not affect your answer. So answer is negative 25. Then 30 minus 40 is negative 10, 40 30 is 10, and 50 20 is 30. Okay, so now you have a new timeline where you have 0 in the start, 1 is negative 25, 2 is negative 10, 3 is 10, and 4 is 30. Okay, so so it means the outflow in the start, it is equal to 0. So if you apply the formula of IRR, if you apply the formula of IRR in the financial calculator, you will see that you will get 5.567%. 5.567%. So you know that they have written instead of crossover rate, they have written IRR, because they are using the calculation method of IRR. Okay, but this is called crossover rate because this is for the two projects. Okay, so this is called the crossover rate. So it means at this rate, 5.56%, 67%, the NPV, the difference between NPV of A and B is 0. In other words, the NPV of A is equal to NPV of B. Okay, So if you see that, why is that important? So I will explain. So if you see this graph, this is a formula method. Okay, this is a formula method to calculate the crossover rate. Normally in the exam you will be asked to do the formula method, okay, because you cannot use Excel in exam, so you can not do that. So this is called graphical method. Okay, so as you can see, 5.567. So let's say this rate is here somewhere. Okay, 5.567% is the crossover rate, and this is dotted line is for investment B, and the other solid line is A. Okay, so as you can see, at this rate, NPV of A or B is equal, right? If you just take it there, so let's say this is whatever is the answer. So at this rate, for both A and B, NPV, the difference of the NPV is equal to 0, right? Okay, next question is that once we have calculated this crossover rate, then what is the purpose of this rate? Okay, because last time we remember, we know that we had an IRR. Okay, so we knew that our cost of capital should be less than our IRR. If it is less, it means our NPV would be positive, right? So it means previously we had an IRR and we were trying to get a financing lower than this IRR so that we can make positive NPV. Okay, lower the cost of capital, positive would be the higher would be the NPV. So same goes for this graph as well. So it means that, but since we have two projects, so we cannot decide. Okay, now if you see NPV, okay, so it means that 5.567%. Okay, so let's say if your actual cost of capital, in this question it is 11%. Okay, but assume that your actual cost of capital is 3%. Okay, so it means 5.567% is the rate. So if your actual cost of capital is 3% here, so which projects are you going to select? Anyone? If your actual cost of capital is 3%, which project would you select? Anyone? Project A, very good. Thank you, Atika. So we are going to select project A because it has the higher NPV than this B. Okay, so it means that if your cost of capital is lower than the crossover rate, except project A, it is in our favor, right? But if your NPV, sorry, if your actual cost of capital is higher, let's say it is 8%. So if you see 8%, which one is higher NPV? It is B. Okay, B. So we are going to select B. So once you have, so what is the takeaway? Takeaway is that you calculate if the projects are number one, mutually exclusive. Okay, number B is they have equal scale of initial cash outflow and life. Okay, then you need to do one thing, that is you calculate crossover rate. So with the help of the crossover rate, you fix a rate, and at this rate, then you decide if in the market actual financing is 3%, or maybe in the market the financing is provided 8%, then you decide which one to take, okay, A or B. So this is the basis of your decision, okay. So you should invest in B because it has higher NPV. Of course, we have saw that here, we have seen that here, that we were accepting project B, NPV and IRR, so we were accepting it. But if, let's say, if there is any change in the cost of capital other than 11%, right, then we are going to accept it. Even if you extend this one to 11%, you see this will follow like this, but this will be like this, because your actual cost of capital is 11%, right? So if you still extend this, so you see that NPV of B is higher than NPV of A. So you are going to select project B. Okay. So this time today we actually completed very quickly because the student, they didn't ask many questions.